Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for yet more dedicated legacy action. Today I felt like playing Delver, so here we are, specifically Rug Delver. Our threat base here is 4 Delver of Secrets, 4 Dragon's Rage Channeler, 3 Tarmogoyf, and 4 Murktide Regent. So we've got a pretty hefty selection of threats here. The Tarmogoyf being especially good because it dodges Pyroblast, which is going to be in a lot of people's sideboards, so for games 2 and 3 it's nice to have Tarmogoyf there. Something I've always been a fan of. We have this pile of our deck, which is our free interactions. So we have 4 Force of Will, 4 Dazes, and 1 Force of Negation. Then we have this pile, which is the grease for the wheels to keep the deck running. So we've got a couple of Mishra's Baubles, which are like not the best cantrip, but they power up our Dragon's Rage Channeler nicely, so that's good. They also have a lot of utility with our fetch lands. We can see what's on top of our library, decide if we want it, etc. 4 Brainstorm Form Ponder, because we're playing Blue and Legacy, it makes sense. And we have a Sylvan Library, which is kind of just like a powerful Brainstorm effect every turn, but it's also an enchantment, which sometimes is relevant for the Dragon's Rage Channeler. And we're in green, so why not? And then this pile of our deck is the interaction that isn't free. So we have Spell Pierce, a Chain Lightning, and then 4 Lightning Bolts. So we can close games out by reducing our opponent's life total to 0, hopefully, with a bit of burn spells or clearing creatures out of the way. The one thing we are missing in this list that I normally quite like is a Brazen Borrower, but we've got different interaction, so let's see how that works out. Mana base wise, 4 Wastelands. We're running 4 Volcanic Islands, 3 Trops, so we have no basic lands in our deck, which is kind of how I prefer to run Delver. That's always how it used to be back in the day when I actually played Delver, which was a very long time ago now. But yeah, so we just got a load of fetches that can get all of our lands. We're just going to be getting Volks and Trops. And that's pretty much it. Let's get our opponents dead, tempo them out, and we're all good. Sideboard wise, we've got Hydroblast, we've got 4 Pyroblasts, so when we need to be playing against blue decks, we've got plenty of good tools for that. We've got some Artifact Hate in the form of 2 Meltdown and an Ancient Grudge. We have some Graveyard Hate, more so than you normally see in Delver decks, to be honest. We've got 3 Surgical Extractions where normally you'd see 1 or 2. And we have 1 Grafdigger's Cage. We've got full 4 slots for Graveyard Hate, which is pretty good. We don't have a Flusterstorm though, which sort of does double duty against the Reanimate decks and Storm decks, but we've just gone for more Graveyard Hate. We have 1 Submerge. This is going to be for things like Marit Lage tokens, and in the mirror we can bounce some things like Murktides and stuff. This is going to have some use. We have 2 Minsc and Boo. For when we need to go bigger, this is what we've got. And this is one of the reasons to run Rug. You have access to Minsc and Boo. Some decks even run it in the main deck. But I kind of like the streamlined Delver plan. So this is where they are. This isn't my list. This is a list I found online that did quite well. I've been a little bit out of the world of Delver for a while, so I think it's best to see what other people are doing. I think the last Delver deck I played on my channel was literally a list from 10 years ago. And I think we just missed the trophy with it. So that was like all the Stifles and Nimble Mongoose and stuff. But today we're playing a modern day Rug Delver deck. Dragon's Rage Channeler is quite the Magic the Gathering card. I think that's it for the deck text, so why not drop a like since you're here. And once you finish watching the video, comment and also subscribe if you haven't yet. That really helps me out. And if you know anyone who's interested in Legacy, by all means share my content. And why not check out the Patreon in the description below. Okay, let's play some Legacy with Delver. Alright, we're into round 1. We're on the play. We have Ponder into some other stuff when we need it. This isn't really the sort of hand I'd like. I prefer to have a 1-drop, but I think, like a 1-drop threat, but I think a Ponder into Murktides is pretty good still. I think we'll keep this. We have the Daze to defend ourselves and a Wasteland to make our Daze better. We can get round to the Murktide when we need to. If our Volcanic Island gets Wasteland and we already have a Polluted Delta. Right, let's lead out with the Volk. Let's go for a Ponder. Like this does put more cards in our graveyard to get our Murktide online, so I'm not opposed to this. I think we'll put the Ponder on top, and then is it the Bauble or the Brainstorm here? What would we rather have thought seized from us if that comes to it? I think I'd rather have the Brainstorm on top. So I'm going to put the Bauble here, draw the Bauble. I'm not going to play it yet because we know what the top cards of our library is anyway. So we're going to do some brainstorming, see if we can find a Dragon's Rage Channeler and leverage the Bauble that way. But we can fight this off next turn if we need more information about what our opponent's doing. Mishra's Bauble from our opponent. So this could be 8 cast, it could be a Delver. More likely to be on the 8 cast side, but it could also be... okay, so they've seen a Brainstorm on top of our library. They didn't play anything, which makes me think they're more likely going to be like Saga Storm. So we're looking for more counter magic, I would say. So let's cast a Brainstorm. They're going to Force of Will our Brainstorm. That's an interesting one. Like picking up our Volcanic isn't that useful here. We've got a Ponder coming next anyway, so I don't think this is too much of a problem. We can just let that go. And we'll drop this Polluted Delta. And I don't think we need to play out the Bauble yet either. So we'll keep that. Now we know the top card of our library. I just think it's fine to save this in case we can get a Dragon's Rage Channeler off our Ponder. And get the extra Surveil on it. There's a Bauble. Cracking the Bauble. They're going to see the Ponder here. Are we supposed to crack before we cast the Ponder? I don't think so. I do think so, because we're supposed to have access. We don't know what colour we're fetching is a problem, so I think we are supposed to cast this Ponder with a fetch. The reason you wouldn't want to have the fetch up to cast your thing after the Ponder is if you have 3 cards that you like, you're only getting 1 of them, which can be a bit of an issue. So we will cast this Ponder though. We're in a situation where we need to do these things and then just drop down a Murktide soon. I would have liked to have had that Brainstorm to get our Murktide back in the deck, but if we can find a Force of Will or something, then we've got a good pairing for our bonus Murktide. So our opponent going to Force of Will this as well. Okay, so we have a Dragon's Rage Channeler, which I would very much like. We only get to keep 1 of these if we crack our fetch land and deploy it right now. But I think that is fine, so we'll put these back. Your library, no. Draw this little guy. Crack this. We're getting another Volk here. Going to cast our little channeler. Then we can deploy this Bauble that we've been keeping sandbagged to get value with. So I wanted to get more value than just it being a cantrip. It either had to be using our fetch for an additional look or doing work with the channeler. If it was the final card to get us to cast the Murktide, that would also be fine. But I think it was right to hold on to it. I see a lot of people not really getting value from their Baubles. We already had a plan. We knew the top cards of our library. I don't think it was necessary to play it. And I think we've now put ourselves in a situation where we're going to get a little bit of extra value here. Force of Will, pitching Murktide Regent. How important is this to me? So they are very much on the Delver train. I think I will Daze this one. Let's play the Bauble. We go on top of our library. A Ponder. Ponder is pretty good. It's certainly better than average draw. We've got land, instant, sorcery. This will be artifact. So I think we can leave this on top of our library and set up for next turn. We'll play this Volk they already know about. The only point of cracking it now, we should be cracking our opponent's turn. Doesn't really matter either way, does it? Because the card on top of our library isn't actually going to help us here. Not for this turn. I see what they're drawing this turn. Mercurial Spelldancer, understood. Opponent kept a pretty peculiar hand. Obviously had a lot of interaction in. But I don't think that's the type of hand you keep game 1. Alright, they've scooped up. I think that's the type of hand you keep game 2 against a combo deck. Okay, so we're on the mirror. So Hydroblast is going to be useful here. Pyroblast is going to be very useful. And then it's a case of, do we want to try something with Minsc and Booze? I don't believe we do, because even though this can be like a big thing that goes over the top, we're in a Wasteland mirror, so our Wastelands are going to get kind of wrecked. So basically all we're doing here is we're replacing our 2-for-1 counterspells with 1-for-1 counterspells. Daze is kind of an awkward one, truth be told. But I think it's probably fine. We didn't see... So we saw the Mercurial, so they're probably on like a blue-red value-y type plan. So I don't think we want the Minsc and Booze. A Wasteland Mirror, that just sounds like this is just going to be a card that sits in our hand for the whole game and doesn't do anything. So I think we'll submit like this. Once upon a time, part of the Delver plan involved Life of Malome for the Mirror, as well as Surgical Extraction to take out your opponent's green source so they couldn't Life of Malome, which was a weird time, like a decade ago or probably longer at this point now. It's our turn to not have any lands. We will mulligan this. This is a much better hand. We can definitely keep this. It's got a decent amount of action in it. It's got a game plan. The question is, what are we going to throw away here? I don't think our hand needs any fixing in terms of putting things back, so I'm going to get rid of the Brainstorm here. Mishra's Bauble. We're at it again. There's a Volcanic. They're going to have a Dragon's Rage Channel this time around. A Delver of Secrets. Sure. Let's see what we can draw this turn. A Murktide Regent. That's not really the one, is it? Are we casting Ponder or are we holding up Spell Pierce here? If we play out a Ponder, starts filling up our graveyard, gives our opponent a chance to Daze, but I don't really mind if they Daze this Ponder. What are we trying to Spell Pierce here? Nothing particularly exciting. So I think we'll just crack the Ponder. Alright. Got a Wasteland, I don't hate that, but we have 2 Dazes. Do we want 2 Dazes? They're pretty good with Wasteland, but I do think... Do we want this Wasteland, or do we want just a fresh card? We don't really know what our opponent's working with over there. They got 4 cards in hand. Is the way the Wasteland could either be good or bad, but if they're a Mercurial, they're more likely to require more mana to work. So the Wasteland can potentially be better there. Sure, I'm going to take the Wasteland here. Try and double up on our soft permission here. We're going to get 1 Daze off the top as well. Problem is, if we use a Daze in this turn cycle, then we don't have the Wasteland plus Daze for the next turn cycle. So we kind of don't want to have to Daze what they play this turn. But if it's on like a Mercurial Spell Dancer, I don't think we have a choice because we don't have any red. Alright, what do they reveal here? A Brainstorm. Sure. We'll take the 3 here. When we play our Tarmogoyf, it will be bigger than a Lightning Bolt, which is important. Alright, so we could just stick a Tarmogoyf here. Let's see if we get Stifled. We did not get Stifled, so we get this Tropical Island. We have double Daze to back up this Tarmogoyf, which I think is worth doing. If we lose this fight, we can then reload with a Murktide. But I think this should be okay. This dodges Lightning Bolt. Depending on how much they fight, depends on if we just reload with a Murktide or if we... Alright, so we've got Brainstorm. Okay, that means our Daze is going to be live with the interaction they play next, in theory. It's something like a 1 mana type thing. Well, I'm not really sure what 1 mana things they could have here. Those are more things like Spell Pierce and Missteps. Right, if this sticks, then we're going to be in an okay-ish spot. 4-5 is definitely bigger than a 3-2. We're getting a Force of Will here, and they can Daze this. If we fight over this and it goes wrong, we probably lose. Because the first Daze they pay for. If they have a Daze in hand, they would have used it here first, rather than doing this. So I think we're going to Daze this. And they're going to pay. So we could Daze this now, when they don't have an additional land. But they already have the 1 land for this. So if we play a Daze here, what they do is they can Daze it back. But if we don't play a Daze, let them get this. No, I think we just let them pay and then we do the second Daze. Type their mana a little bit. Now we're a little bit hanging ourselves out here, but Tarmogoyf is quite difficult for Blue-Red Delver to kill. And once we untap, we can then protect it with a Spell Pierce. And that might be alright. Going to pay for our Daze. They have to know there's another Daze coming here. But I think they still go through the rigmarole, because by tapping this, they effectively get a card out of our hand and a land out of play. How big is our creature? 4-5. It's not too shabby. They can do their own Murktide shenanigans to shrink our Goyf, which will only have 3 things in. We have sorcery, land, and instant, which is still enough to make it so it can survive a Lightning Bolt. But it will be pretty bad against the Murktide they play, which will be 1... I guess it'll only be 5. So if we can get 1 more point of power on our Tarmogoyf, we might be alright. Alright, our opponent timed out. They got their inactivity there. So with our Daze on the stack, they never got a chance to pay for it. I think if we do resolve this Tarmogoyf, we're in a pretty nice spot. We just need to deal with this Delver and hope that Murktide doesn't come down. But we have some resources that can help us a bit with that. We can deploy our own Murktide as well. But we're 1-0. Not necessarily the fashion I wanted to win that one in, but I still think we are probably ahead because the Tarmogoyf's likely to resolve. Alright, let's go to round 2. We're on the play for round 2. Our opening hand has some interaction, but We're going to need to find a way to deploy a threat. I'm debating whether or not we keep this one. We've got 2 pieces of counter magic and a piece of removal. I guess we can spam these off with some fetch lands, and then that will get us towards the Murktide. I'm not a fan of this one, but I think I will keep. I think it's the sort of low end of what I would keep here. It's quite a control-y hand, which isn't really where you want to be with Delver. But Murktide has changed that equation a fair bit, so let's see how we fare. So we're playing out the Polluted Delta first, so we can go and get a lightning bolt, a Volcanic Island to cast our lightning bolt if we need to. Right, there's a Misty Rainforest from our opponent being cracked for a Volcanic Island. Is it just National Delver Day, is it? Alright, we will shoot this on our turn so that we can pay around Daze. Let's crack this for a Volcanic. Say goodbye. This is an interesting situation about what we do with our Bauble, because we are looking to put more cards into our graveyard. I think this time I'm more inclined to actually play it out. And because we can't alter the top of our library, we're just going to see what our opponent's working with over there. To get some more information, a Brainstorm. Okay. So we have Force of Will plus Daze and whatever this... Okay, we have Force of Negation and Force of Will, or Force of Will plus Daze, or double Force of Will. We've got a lot of options of what we can do this turn. So putting a Murktide into play seems relatively doable in the near future. A Wasteland. Not a massive fan of that one. They're not doing anything with it. That's interesting. Sure, so we've lost our Tropical Island here. It's a bit annoying, but we've drawn a Volcanic Island. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we can't actually make a Murktide yet. We'll deploy our extra land so we can hard cast a Daze if we want to. Right, not another Wasteland. That's good for it. A Dragon's Rage Channeler. I think I'm going to cast this. I'm going to pitch this Force of Negation. I think the Force of Will is just better. I'm going to keep their creature off the board. Alright. And this will also give us enough food to play a Murktide. I'd like to draw a blue card this turn, ideally. A Chain Lightning is not a blue card. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can play a Murktide, but we'll be playing into a Daze. So that's kind of a real awkward one for us there. If we wait for another land might not come. If we play this, we have to protect it with a Force rather than a Daze. This is a real tricky one. So we're going to go for it and just try and get this game progressing towards a resolution, I think. Not a big fan of this play. Maybe we're supposed to wait a turn. This could be a Brainstorm for an answer, though, since we know they have the Brainstorm in hand. Brainstorm for an answer would help us out a lot. Am I dazing this Brainstorm? I think so. I'll play our Volcanic and pass. So we got 5-5. Our opponent can make a smaller Murktide right now. So that's good. If they make another creature, we've got Chain Lightning. If we can draw a blue card, we can Force of Will. The only thing that usually cleans us up in the blue-red Delver decks is a Murktide of their own or a Brazen Borrower. These are the things we are hoping to avoid. But this will win the game in 3 turns, plus a Chain Lightning. We just need to untap, draw a blue card, and sit back on our Murktide, just chipping away at chunks of 5 until our opponent dies. They need to get some more instants or sorceries in their graveyard. Okay, we're going for a double Lightning Bolt here. Okay. Opponent's down to 3 cards. They didn't make a land, so all of their cards are most likely spells. A Wasteland. Okay, I'm pretty happy to Wasteland them if they missed a land last turn. This means that the chance of them deploying a Murktide drop, which is one of the things we're trying to avoid. They play a 1-drop, we've got that covered. Okay, so they've got a land, they can deploy a Murktide if that's the thing they have in their hand. We could be in trouble here. Yeah, this looks like the Murktide. So we need to find a red source of our own. We don't have a Brazen Borrower, so we need another one of these Lightning Bolt effects. We don't have the second blue card here, so our opponent is just massively ahead now. We're probably going to die in a couple of turns, more or less. A Wasteland isn't really going to help us here. It can stop them deploying another one, I suppose. This gives us something for Brainstorms potentially, but the sort of time for Brainstorming is gone. I think we'll play this Wasteland and use it. Try and make it so the one thing we have to beat is the Murktide. We don't want to have to try and beat multiple things, and the more mana they have, the more likely it is they can cantrip into another threat. We just got to try and keep that at bay. Alright, they just had a bunch of lands coming off the top here. So missed a land for a turn and then just played lands every other turn. So at least we know roughly what they've been drawing, and then we can try and work out what they had in hand, because they didn't have a Daze before. Force of Will, you're a little bit late, aren't you? Okay. So our opponent kills us in 2 hits. We can't make a Murktide of equaling size. We can't make a Murktide and then hit their Murktide with a Chain Lightning, because our Chain Lightning is a sorcery speed spell. So we have 1 draw step to find a Lightning Bolt. Alternatively, we can find a Brainstorm and maybe find land plus Lightning Bolt. But it's not looking spectacular for us. Right, here's the thing that I said we needed to do. Let's Brainstorm. They got a counter spell for this. They didn't play a land last turn. This Daze doesn't do anything. This Delver of Secrets won't have flying. We're just dead. Yeah, our opponent had the double answer, the double spell to beat our Murktide, unfortunately. Okay. So we want Pyroblasts. We want Hydroblast. We want our 2-for-1 counters out of here. That'll do for what we're up to. Especially on the play, the Daze is much better. Alright. Our mana base is a little bit more fragile than theirs because we are splashing a 3rd colour. And they just look like a pretty stock one. Sure. We'll play a Dragon's Rage Channel on turn 1. And then we'll blow some creatures up. Crack this for Volcanic. We don't want our Volcanic to be Wastelanded, but they shouldn't Wasteland us if we're playing a Dragon's Rage Channel out. Unless they have Force of Will into Wasteland. Okay. Because you shouldn't really Wasteland people when they're ahead on board, because it just goes a bit wrong for you quite easy then. Unless you know you've got the stuff in play answered easily. Alright, let's see. If they drop a creature here, we can probably Chain Lightning it. Is most likely the best one, because obviously Sorcery Speed has some ramifications, and the fact that they can bounce it back is also a bit awkward. Alright, there's your Misty Rainforest crack. There's Volcanic Island. What are you going to play, opponent? Delver, Dragon's Rage Channeler, or a Cantrip, or a Bolt. Blue, it's a Ponder. Alright, that's pretty good for us. That's not a threat, so we are somewhat ahead on board. And then a Bauble, it's not going to get them any additional value right now. They did not shuffle off their Ponder, so they clearly wanted one of the cards there. Or multiple of the cards there. Alright, it's over to us. They're drawing a card from their Bauble, and then we draw a card for our turn. It's a Bauble. So we have an interesting proposition about how we navigate this turn. So we've got a lot of options, and I'll quickly go through them. So we can Brainstorm off this Volcanic Island, but then it means we're kind of shields down on using these, unless we find a red source. We can play a Tropical Island first, but that means we don't get to fetch land. But we do have the Bauble, so we can scoot one of the cards off the top if we need to. So I think we're going to go for this Tropical Island, Brainstorm. Let's see what we have on top. A Daze. I'm going to leave this on top of our library. I would like to draw this. Alright. So, which of these would I like to keep? So we're definitely keeping the Bauble, because that's going to... This is going to be instant, land, artifact, creature. Would I rather keep a Chain Lightning or a Delver of Secrets if we want to transform the Channeler right now? If we want to transform the Channeler right now, we probably put the Brainstorm on top and then the Delver. Then we can play this, put a Delver into the graveyard, turn our guy into a 3/3. And then we know what's on top of our library. May as well take extra card here. We're also pumping our guy. Okay, so they've got a Lightning Bolt. That's a little bit awkward. I kind of wish we had the Delver but such is life sometimes. Alright, so we've got removal for their creatures, but they will have a piece of removal for our creature. They should pay around Daze to do it. We're very surprised if they didn't. But we have Brainstorm to try and look for something else in the near future. We've already powered out our graveyard nicely, so we can get towards a Murktide soon. Yep, here's the Lightning Bolt. We're not going to Daze this. We just have to let it go. We're not going to Brainstorm end of turn. Right, Ponder or Brainstorm here. Our hand is pretty reasonable. If our opponent's not playing out threats now, that probably means they're going towards a Murktide. So we kind of need to keep the things that beat the Murktide. So I think a Ponder is better here for us than a Brainstorm. Dragon's Rage Channeler is pretty nice here. as is Delver of Secrets. So if we put Ponder on the bottom, then the Delver, then the Channeler, then we can cast a Channeler. This is going to be a 3/3. Pass a turn. We draw the Delver next turn. We can set it up with a Brainstorm if for some reason we need to cast a spell and we want to get rid of the Ponder. Or we can just leave the Ponder on top and flip our Delver as well. So a Lightning Bolt on our guy, sure, we have another threat. A Wasteland. We'd probably lose our Tropical Island here, but it might be our Volk. Alright, they're more scared of the Tarmogoyf. So we have two potential plays here. We could Brainstorm first, but we know there's a Ponder on top, so we need one of the next two cards to be a land if we're doing this play. Because the reason we do that is to make sure we can develop our mana and play our threat. If we Brainstorm and our opponent tries to Daze this, then we can pay a Daze and then they can pay back. So that's not really going to work. I think we are just supposed to play this and hope they don't have a Wasteland here. Feels like their hand is just removal at the moment. And they've already used two pieces of removal, so if they do Wasteland us, at least we're ahead on board with a creature. I'd really like to not see a Wasteland this turn. A Ponder. Sure. They shuffled their library. Okay. So they don't have the thing they want most necessarily, which is good. Not a waste. Oh, they are on Rug. Interesting. I didn't know that. A Pyroblast with 1 mana up. Sure, I guess we're not countering that. Okay, so our opponent is on Rug as well. We're probably going to have very similar lists here. Ponder sees more cards, so let's do the Ponder. We do want some of these cards. We want to play a land. So put Spell Pierce on top. Then Delver, then the Strand. We'll draw the Strand. We don't really want to crack the land, because we want to draw this Delver. If we lose the Ponder underneath, that's fine, because we can reset up our Delver. A Ponder, sure, we'll let our opponent have that. Yeah, they're playing around Daze pretty easily over there, which is unfortunate for us. A Wasteland. Okay, so we're going to lose our Volcanic Island here. How important is this land for us? We can Daze, we can get a Lightning Bolt. So we can go get Red Source, bolt them, Daze our own bolt. That seems bad. So we're a little bit down on mana sources over here. We can get a Volcanic, cast our Delver, and pass. We don't know if this is going to flip, but we can do the upkeep Brainstorm to make it flip if we feel the need. A Dragon's Rage Channeler, sure. That makes me not want to flip our guy immediately. I think we would like to Chain Lightning this guy. What's on top of our library? Murktide Regent. We will not reveal this. Let's Lightning Bolt. We can Chain Lightning because they don't have red right now. So let's Chain Lightning this guy. Now we can Daze something even though they can pay. And it'll allow us to pick up our Volcanic Island. We have to decide if that's the thing that's important to us. Spell Pierce. Alright, we'll let them Surveil. Would I like to pick up our Volcanic Island and have another spell? I think I probably would. It's kind of awkward. We're basically just throwing away this Daze. I think we are hitting this. The Lightning Bolt. Getting our 1 point of damage in. Either of us can deploy a large Murktide if we draw one, provided we have mana. So I'm looking for the mana for it, they're looking for the actual Murktide. But we're both 1 card away from deploying a big Murktide, I imagine. Wouldn't mind those Pyroblasts in our deck. Right, getting a Tarmogoyf here. Sure, how big is it? 5/6. Alright, problem with Murktide is that it is blue, which means it can struggle against some things. Are we going to Brainstorm in response here? I think we are. Are we? If we hit a land, we could just deploy the Murktide. But I think we can take 1 hit here. I'm going to Brainstorm. Oof. That's not where we want to be, is it? Yikes. So we'd like the Pyroblast next turn. We don't have a use for it right now, because we're probably not going to be able to Daze anything here. Although, maybe we will. So if we put the Murktide on top and then a Daze, we can reveal the Daze and draw it. Now we're at the mercy of a Wasteland here as well. Our opponent does have a quicker clock. We draw the Murktide next turn and we can deploy the Delver, and maybe we can get in for 6 So our opponent can kill us in 4 turns on board, 3 turns with a bolt. We kill our opponent in 4 turns, but that becomes 2 turns if this can flip. If not, this can chump block as well. So we've got options, but our opponent has some cards over there. Okay, that's an awkward one to see on the other side. We've got this Murktide Regent, doesn't do anything here. I think we are casting our Delver. If our opponent gives us the option to Daze, I think we take it just to untap our land. Sad, but that's the state of affairs we're in. A Daze. I think we have to untap our land here. This has not been a pretty game from our side of the board, sadly. So we go to attacks. I don't really want to use the Lightning Bolt on the Delver. I'd rather save that for our opponent's life total. So they connect for 5 this turn. If this flips, let's see what it flips into. It did not flip. Okay. If it's a Wasteland, then we are not going to have a good time here. This is 6, and then it can flip next turn. I think we take the 6 here, as ugly as that may be. I think we Lightning Bolt our opponent in the end step, so we have a chance of ripping the bolt to kill them next turn. A Brainstorm. I don't think we can afford to Pyroblast that either. We just have to let that one go. We might even be on a 75 card mirror here. Very similar looking decks. There's a Flooded Strand. We can shuffle away that Brainstorm. Let's go for this. If they have a Lightning Bolt in hand, we just can't win the game anyway. So there's no point playing around it, I think, here. We could take 6 next turn. A Daze. Alright, we can't pay. That's a no from me. Alright. We're just getting out-delvered here. A Ponder. Let's go for it. Pyroblast, Tarmogoyf. I don't think we can keep these. The problem is, if we play this land, it gives us access to Pyroblast. But it takes us 1 life. I think that is worth it. And next turn we can try the Murktide out. If we attack for 3 this turn, it's still... It means we could draw a bolt to potentially win, but I think we have to hold back on blocks here. Although I don't really want to block. But if our Pyroblast doesn't go through and their Delver flips, we have to do that. But we can play a Murktide, which can then stonewall the Tarmogoyf. Let's see what information their Delver is going to give us. Not flipping. So the Delver can't attack this turn. We take 5. I don't like it, but kind of trying to resolve our Murktide. A Brainstorm. That's a pretty good one. I think we have to Pyroblast their Delver so that we can attack for 3. Yes, it's going to be tight. We could draw our own Tarmogoyf. Maybe that's going to be a safer play. Okay, the Wasteland here. We definitely can't draw that Tarmogoyf on top of our line. It's just like a Murktide from our opponent here. Alright, let's go and get ourselves to 1 life. Get a Volcanic. Go for Pyroblast. Daze beats us here. I don't think we can beat Daze at all. They got 1 card in hand though. So we can deploy our Murktide if they don't Wasteland us here. If they do Wasteland us, we have to draw a Volk or a Trop. We can't draw a fetch land because we're on 1 life. We got it? We have not got it. GG's opponent. There was a lot going on in that game. It was tough. I think our opponent's probably a little bit more experienced with Delver in this day and age than I am. We got into a lot of awkward spots with our Dazes, which didn't really work out for us. But it's a tricky game. I think that I could probably review this and see some things that maybe we could have done a little bit differently along the lines. But we did get a little bit jammed up with some land. They had the double run of Wastelands that kind of buried us a little bit in the sort of early game. I think if we'd have had our access to our mana, if we'd just had 1 more mana early on, then I think this game would be pretty easy. Like, we died with good spells in hand, right? So, and we had to do some pretty ugly plays with things like Dazes along the lines too, which we would have liked to have brainstormed away. Alright, let's go to round 3 with 1-on-1. We're on the play for round 3. We have Delver into some good stuff. Let's keep this. Delver, Daze, just a classic Delvering, right? We've got Daze, we've got Wasteland, and then if that fails, we've got the Murktide. Alright, it's our turn. I think we're going to hold this Bauble for the second turn. We can use it with our Polluted Delta to get a little bit more value. Just tiny little edges we get, rather than just cycling it for a plain card, effectively. We have a fetch land, we may as well use it. Our Delver's in. Let's see what our opponent's doing. The one reason we might want to have used it on our turn was to see what our opponent's deck is and maybe get a slightly better idea of how we're supposed to deploy our Daze if they can multi-spell in one turn. Which isn't necessarily that likely, but a load of 0 drops is certainly possible. I think we let this Ponder go. It's not really what we're about. Our Wasteland not looking so good. What have we got on top? Can we naturally flip? A Brainstorm and reveal. Sure. So now we don't necessarily need to do the Bauble trick here. We can just Brainstorm and fetch land. The question is, how important is brainstorming right now? Like what have we got? We don't really want this Wasteland by the looks of it, so maybe we can put that one back. So we do have some cards we don't mind slinging away and shuffling off. Okay, so we probably don't need all these lands, so we can put these back, deploy this, and do we need this Bauble cracked right now? Would I like one more card from what we've got here? Maybe. That means we have to crack the Polluted Delta at a slightly awkward time in order to do so. Let's go to attacks first. Let's get the simple bit out of the way. 3 damage. Do we want to play and crack the Bauble, or do we want to hold it this turn? I think I'm going to hold it this turn, so we don't have to immediately crack our fetch lands, because we don't want the cards on top really. So, City of Traitors. Lotus Petal. Okay. Show and tell. Let's crack this. I think we want a Tropical Island here. We'll cast a Brainstorm. Another Daze. These cards look very familiar, don't they? Sure, we'll put the Polluted Delta and the Wasteland back, I guess. Then we're going to have to double Daze this, aren't we? Let's Daze. They're going to pay. Then we're going again, I suppose. We've got the Force of Will. Alright, so this resolves. What do we put in? Do we put in a 3/3 guy? I think we might have to. Yeah, that's pretty good. We know what's on top of our library. We are dead in 2 turns. Okay, so we're going to want some Pyroblasts. We're going to want a Hydroblast for things like sneak attack. I don't think we want the surgical extractions here. I don't think that's where this game is going to be. How much do we care about Mages of the Moon? Is a pretty important question. Because we can board out our red spells here. But if our opponent plays a Mages of the Moon, then what are we doing? Not a lot. So I think I'm going to get rid of a library and keep in one of our bolts, just because this is a clean answer to Mages of the Moon if that happens. I'm not really expecting Mages of the Moon to be the way our opponent approaches this match, but I'd like to not get caught short if that is the case. So let's try these things. Like, we can still win with just red spells, but it's very hard. Okay, so we've got some counter magic, but we can't deploy our channelers. And if we deploy our Delver, we don't have a blue thing up. So I think we have to mulligan this one. This doesn't get show and telled on very easily. What is going to be the one to go here? It's probably the Force of Negation. We don't need two 2-for-1 spells if we can avoid it. I think turn 1 we can try and go for a Ponder here. Or do we think our opponent's going to turn 1 us? I guess we could just hold up a land. And then next turn we could Ponder. Sure, let's try the ultra defensive one. I don't just want to get turn 1 thing. Yeah, so this could have potentially been a defense grid. We do need to say no to this one. We have a relatively clean answer in Spell Pierce here. They can't Daze back. They have to force if they want it to go through. Okay. So happy we didn't cast our Ponder on turn 1. Now we can just cast our little insect human wizard man. What do they pitch to this? A Daze. Sure. I don't think this game is about the Delver coming into play just yet. I think I'd rather... It feels like our opponent was trying to bait counter spells out of us to protect our Delver. Another defense grid. Okay, well we have to counter this, otherwise we don't get to cast anything. So we have a Pyroblast for show and tell. Our opponent was also just using the Force of Will then because they didn't expect to be able to use it for much longer. So we've got a Pyroblast for show and tell. But sneak attack can still get us. Tropical Island. I don't feel the need to play that. Their opponents can play Spell Pierce. So I think I will play this out to play around Spell Pierce. They got a third defense grid? No. We're going to get show and tell on here. Alright. Now we need to find some action. It's not really action. I think this is better used on ourselves here. What have we got? A Dragon's Rage Channeler. Creature, artifact, land, instant. So it will be a bigger guy. We're going to be shields down this turn. But this will give us some pressure. Sure, we'll keep this card. Our opponent might also think, oh, what is the thing they've kept? It must be interaction. But I think we just need to get a threat and try and get this game won. Because if we leave our opponent with enough time, they're just going to win the... Uh-oh. Sylvan Drifter. Okay. Yeah, if we give our opponent enough time, they will just win the game. Please don't get me. Alright. Okay, let's play this guy out. We can crack our land and turn it into a 3-3. Is there any point of playing the Delver? I think it's better to pretend we have interaction in hand. It doesn't attack favourably with this board anyway, so we'll just leave that. We could always use it as a way of filtering the top card of our library, but I think it's probably just has to be a bluff of like... Spell Pierce isn't even such a good bluff right now. We'll pause for a little bit and just ponder, and we'll pass. So I think it's better as a bluff than a thing that does nothing on board other than just make our fetch hand be able to scry one for us. They chose not to shuffle their library with ponder. Uh-oh. I think we're getting done here. No? Okay. A Hydroblast. Now is it worth playing out the Delver? I think so. Sure. Let's go for this Delver. Like a Pyroblast can take out this Sylvan Drifter. Again, we don't want our 3-3 just attacking into a 2-4. It doesn't really get us anywhere. A Brainstorm. Nope. So we've got Hydroblast in case they have a sneak attack. But we've kept the illusion of us having interaction. Because we kept one open last turn by keeping the Delver in hand. Okay. This could be a red mana source. No, they're not tapping it. So this isn't sneak attack. If it's show and tell, we lose. If it's nothing, then maybe that's okay. A Grizzlebrand. Okay, I think we lose. Drawing a bunch. We can't block it unless we crack our fetch land. I don't think it's worth cracking our fetch land for this. The way we win this game is if our opponent draws some more cards and makes a mistake, I guess. Yeah, we're not winning this one. Right, we're going to clean up. Let's see what wealth of goodies they decided they didn't need. So we might get to bash for 6 this turn. That could be exciting. What have you got on top of our library then? A Misty Rainforest. So crack this for a red source. Draw something. Pyroblast isn't nothing. Guess we're good attacks. Let's get a little bit of damage in. It's going to be hard to interact with these two blasts. A Brainstorm. Do we counter this or do we just try and kill the Drifter? I think we just try and kill the Drifter in response. As bad as this is. They're clearly setting up the Brainstorm. So they can just Drifter us to death. Murktide Regent. Is that even good here? It's big. Are we going to win? Are we going to lose the game this turn? 6. I think we put on top of our library. Like, we probably wouldn't lose this turn anyway, but if somehow our Pyroblast saves us from getting drifted, I guess we could have let them finish off the Brainstorm. Yeah, okay. So we're almost certainly dead here. They're just going to end recall us. So the reason I wanted to hit there is because they are going to see more cards. They might have more interaction to stop their Drifter from dying. So here comes the Emrakul, I imagine. And then we take 15. Could just be the Grizzlebrand that we also know they have. There's the Emrakul. There goes our life total. Yep. It was an awkward one. We're sadly 1 and 2. But we got 2 more rounds to go. So let's see if we can get a positive going on this league. We're on the play. We don't have threat for turn 1, but we can ponder into something. We have a little bit of cover. I think we'll keep. I think the Volcanic is more important to us than the Trop. So I'm going to lead out on the Trop for our ponder here. We're looking for more threats more than anything. And we're just trying to fill up our graveyard. So we can get Murky Boy on the go. Delver Secrets is a threat. I think we'll bury the Chain Lightning. And then the Spell Pierce. And then we'll put the Delver on top. Just a Scalding Tarn. Okay. Let's deploy Delver. So we've got Daze, Spell Pierce, and Lightning Bolt for interaction. Our Delver will flip off the Chain Lightning next turn. It's community, and end turn Brainstorm. A little suspicious. That's more of a combo thing to do than a control or aggro type thing. So maybe we're not playing Delver this time. Polluted Delta. Cracking the Polluted Delta. A counterbalance, you say? I would not like to play against counterbalance. Let's try and Spell Pierce this. A Daze. I would like to Daze their counterbalance. I'll boot back this drop to our hand. A Force of Will. Alright. Counterbalance is probably going to get us here. We are flipping this with the Chain Lightning. It's going to attack here. So we're going to try and power out a Murktide next turn. I have to imagine we've taken a lot of our opponent's counter spells. What are we going to see here? It's going to be a Murktide. It is a Murktide. Let's try and cast a Brainstorm here. They had a Delver sequence. Okay, so we're not killing this Murktide. How big is it going to be? A 6/6. We can resolve our Murktide. 1, 2, 3. Oh, we're supposed to play the. We're supposed to Lightning Bolt here, weren't we? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh dear, that was a mistake. We need to land here. Oh no, we've made a mistake. We're supposed to Lightning Bolt end of turn just to run into counterbalance to play our Murktide. We could attack, but then we can't trade this. We could trade it now to make a Murktide 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Make a 7/7 Murktide by trading our Insectile Aberration. That feels like we've made an error. Would we like our opponent to untap and do some stuff? Yikes. That's not gone great. I think we have to pass here. We made a bit of an error there. Brain was like, oh, you don't want to cast a spell into the counterbalance. But we did. We wanted to power out our Murktide. It's Polluted Delta. If they attack, we might be able to race them with lightning bolts and such. So I don't know what's on top of their library right now. A Delver of Secrets. Okay. Let's go for a lightning bolt upstairs here. How down are the shields? Ponder. Just blind flip it on their counterbalance twice. It's pretty awkward for us. Okay, we're going to attacks. Got 2 cards in hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This time we can do this. We know you don't have a 7-drop on top of your library. Do you have a Daze? Alright, they're cracking just in case I have a Murktide on top. Daze. They had the Force of Will blue card as their last cards. Well, yeah, I guess. And now they flip the Delver because of the Daze. Yikes. This has gone horribly for us. So I think our opponent's got pretty fortunate here with the draws. Now we did make the mistake of not playing the Bolt out there when we could have. Our opponent did have the Force of Will anyway, but I think it was obviously still a mistake. Red source? Not a red source. We can kill our opponent here. If a top card of their library... Oh wait, we know they've got a Daze. Can we kill our opponent through a Daze here, is the question. So we attack for 3. We shoot them with a lightning bolt. Well, this is our only way of winning this game, so let's just see if it works. So we know they have Daze in hand. So we lightning bolt our opponent here. So we got 1 on top again, then... what are we supposed to do about that, right? They blind flip their counterbalance 3 times this game. 4 times this game. Yeah. Alright. The gods are not smiling on us today. That was absolutely savage. Okay. Pyroblast in. Hydroblast in. And... oh, counterbalance is such a beating. I'd rather have Dazes or hard counters. We're fighting over... we're definitely going to remove some number of Force of Wills, I think. How many Dazes do we want to remove? Do a split. Oh, the Dazes can be pretty bad. We don't want to get jammed up with multiple of them. Something like this. Because counterbalance does change the maths on what we need to deal with here. Oh, jeez. Because they can just play a counterbalance around a day, and it's such a powerful card that we need to have hard answers for it. Alright, this hand is great. We've got Dragon's Rage Channeler with Daze backup, followed by a bunch of cantrips. Like, this is where you want to be. Here's our Dragon's Rage Channeler. Let's pass the turn. Steam Vents. Free damage for free. A Dragon's Rage Channeler. This is kind of an awkward one for us to Daze here. Because if our opponent has a Daze, then the whole world... Okay, let's just try and Daze this. If they want to bounce their Steam Vents, that's better for us than us bouncing a Volcanic. You wouldn't lead out on Steam Vents unless you had to. Yeah, I'll keep this on top, I think. Alright. Then we can play another one. And go to the races. Let's go attack for 1. Our opponent might just drop a counterbalance next turn. So getting some creatures on the board underneath the counterbalance feels like an okay place to be. We still get the Surveils, but we can't let them have Dragon's Rage Channeler when they are a counterbalance deck, because it means they get to Surveil every time they cast a spell, which makes their counterbalance really good. A Wasteland, okay. Gonna Wasteland us, okay, that's fine. We do have another land in hand. We've got DRC, a Lightning Bolt, okay. Back over to us. Creature, so if we put a sorcery into our graveyard, we turn our Dragon's Rage Channeler on, so let's do that. Does mean we're shields down with the Pyroblast return, but I think we need to make sure we have another land drop coming in case they have another Wasteland. Let's Surveil. A Lightning Bolt. I quite like a Lightning Bolt. It deals with a bunch of stuff. Put on top of our library. Lightning Bolt, Delver of Secrets, Ponder. So put Ponder on the bottom, and the Delver, and the Bolts. If we keep this set up, we basically lose to Wasteland. I think we have to shuffle and try and find a land. Like, why would you play Steam Vents as your only mana source? Like, it has to be their only, like, coloured mana source they have. Which means they got a lot of spells in their hand and potentially Wastelands. We've already seen one Wasteland. Alright, Scalding Tarn. Not a Wasteland. A Lightning Bolt. Okay. But if we can find a tropical island, we can deploy a Tarmogoyf. We're going to see a threat from our opponent here. Delver, we can... Okay, it's one of these guys. Alright, so probably looking at a Brainstorm this turn unless we hit a land. Do we Brainstorm first? If we've Brainstorm into a land, we want one that hits Tarmogoyf. I think we just fire off a bolt and hope that we don't get dazed. I think it's better to do it now because they might sound like a Spell Pierce. If we've got Daze here, it's real bad for us. Alright, it's going to be real bad for us. We cannot pay. Land, creature, instant. So a Ponder will turn the Dragon's Rage Channeler into a 3-power creature. A Delver, sure. That's something we have an answer for. But we're ideally saving this for things like Murktides. Alright. Dragon's Rage Channeler of our very own. Is it better to get one of these out of the way now? Are we supposed to try and Brainstorm into a land drop? Our opponent has 1 mana available, so that's probably a Lightning Bolt, so just running this guy out is not going to work very much. I think... I guess it could be a blue spell. It could just be Hydro or Pyroblast. I think if we don't make a land drop this turn, we're not going to win the game. Because we need to get these cards out of our hand. A Flusterstorm, sure. So we could have got away with playing the Channeler then. But we do need to hit a land drop, otherwise we're just not going to be able to play the game. So our opponent had a number of spells they could have had there. They could have had Pyroblast, they could have had Hydroblast, they could have had Lightning Bolt, they could have had Spell Pierce, they could have had Misstep. So I went for the line that had the highest reward because we are behind and we need high reward plays to get back into this game. And it didn't work out for us. Alright, sure. Brainstorm. I think this is the third... Is this the third Delver Mirror we've played today? I think so. 3 Delver Mirrors and a Sneak and Show so far. Didn't really sign up for non-stop Delver Mirrors, if I'm being honest. Yuck. Oh, our opponents are drawing better than us. In some instances, they're definitely playing better than us. And they do have different lists as well. Like the turn where we didn't get the Murktide into play last game was a huge error on our part. Okay. It's got to be good. It's not good. So we don't have any permanents in play. So our opponent can bash us for 4 this turn. A Delver. Amazing they haven't got a sorcery or a bauble or anything yet. Over to us. Murktide Regent we can't do anything with. We're not technically dead. But it certainly feels like we're dead. So this is 5 damage. And next turn they crash in for another 5 and we die. So if we draw a land, we can kill one of them. And potentially tread water for another turn. There's a lot of big ifs and buts here. We found a land. Unfortunately, there's a land that costs us a life point, which is quite big. So we have instant, creature, sorcery, land. I think if we play out the Channeler, it can't be Flusterstormed and it can block the Delver. They got Hydroblast here, haven't they? Yeah, okay, so they might have had that when we had the choice between that and the Brainstorm anyway. That'll do us. Yeah, our opponent drew significantly better than us, and they also triple blind flipped off of their counterbalance in game 1. We might have had a chance to win that game, but I'm pretty sure the Force of Will was one of the cards they had in their hand because they stayed on 2 cards for a little while, and that's probably what it was. So we weren't really going to resolve our Murktide. But there's a slim possibility that maybe that was the thing. Although we did see the top cards of their library, so it must have been the thing in their hand, actually, yeah. So we did punt by not putting the Murktide into play. Or trying to. But our opponent did have the answer if we didn't make that mistake. So, yeah. 3 Delver mirrors, and I've split them 1 and 2. Not great. Let's go to the final round and see if we can get 2-3. This is our opening hand. We've got Island Ponder, Island Dragon's Channeler, Delver. We've got Dazes. Sorry, we've got Daze, we've got Force of Will. We keep this one. A Marsh Flats. Interesting. That might just be a black fetch for Reanimator. So not an enormous fan of that being. Right, we'll go and get this. And we'll play Dragon's Channeler. It's better than Delver. And also it means we keep the Delver as a blue card for our Force of Will. Our opponent's turn. Right, they're cracking their fetch land. They didn't crack it in our turn to cast an Entombs. That's something. An honest to God scrubland. Maybe we're playing against some sort of cool black-white brew. A Dark Ritual. That's not a fun one, is it? I think we'll allow this one because we have 2 pieces of interaction. Oh, no. They got us. They're not a Reanimator deck. That's a Humans deck. We're right there. So this is going to be the... Oh, Arena Rector. This will go and get them a Planeswalker. Not a fan of that happening. How do we stop them from sacrificing this? That is certainly a question that I don't think I have a good answer for. We'll crack this. I think we are on getting red spells here. We deploy this guy first. And I guess we're pondering. We do have a Force of Negation in our deck. That might be useful. Put into graveyard. Another lightning bolt. That's not really what we're looking for, is it? Put into graveyard. Force of Negation, please. No. Tarmogoyf, Dragon's Rage Channeler. I think it's just any order and shuffle. A Brainstorm. Alright. We're not attacking here either. So something like a Phyrexian Tower or a Cabal Therapy. The Cabal Therapy is the one that we kind of hope. Okay, Dathi Voidwalker. We have an answer to this, so we don't really care about this one. We can bolt this. This Arena Rector is a little scary. For sure. So I think step 1 is cast Lightning Bolt targeting Dathi Voidwalker. Get some Surveil triggers. A Wasteland. Do we want a Wasteland to just get rid of this Cavern of Souls and turn our stuff? They've already got the Rector, which is the scary thing. So I think we're just trying to get this game won. This can go into our graveyard. And then I think we want to Brainstorm here. Tarmogoyf, put this into the graveyard. That'll turn our guys into 3/3s. Mishra's Bauble. This is the same as seeing another card, but it gives us more triggers. But it means the 3 cards we get to see aren't this. And we're specifically looking for Force of Negation, so I think we put this into our graveyard. Force of Negation counters the Cabal Therapy and stops it from going into the graveyard, which is really key. So we can deploy a Delver here. So I think we put Tarmogoyf and then the Delta. We got double Force of Will and Daze here. Next time we can deploy the Delvers if we want to. Like, our counter spells aren't going to be the most useful. But they've already got the scary thing in. If we'd have countered that Dark Ritual, we would have been much better off. But, alas, I misread what our opponent was on. I thought they were a reanimator. Okay, playing a land and nothing else. They might just be doing it second main, getting in their 1 point of chip damage, and then they're going to go get a Planeswalker, kill all our Dragon's Rage channelers, and then we're going to lose to it. Alright, a reprieve. Let's go to text. I can't remember what the top card of our library is underneath this Polluted Delta. Oh, jeez. I think we'll just play out this Delver so we have multiple threats. And we can use the fetch land to try and get us around. So we've got Force of Will blue card into their counter souls. Probably not great. A Cabal Therapy wins them the game. A Phyrexian Tower wins them the game. I don't think they have either of those because they probably would have just ran them out by now. A Caracas. Not a Phyrexian Tower. A Helm of Obedience. Do we care about Helm of Obedience is the question. I don't think so. They've shown us something here though. What have we got on top? Tarmogoyf. Crack this for... So they could fire this now and get Tarmogoyf, but our plan is to go to the sky. I think it's worth cracking, although if they lose 1 life here, that puts them dead to these guys actually. Yeah. It's not going to work for them, is it? I think we'll get Trop here just because. What about this Delver? Are you going to flip? We'll reveal the Daze. Go to tax. 9 in the sky. Let's see if we can get there. Cracking the fetch land. What is this going to be? Fatal push their own Rector. But you do that on your turn as a Planeswalker. Alright, this is a Desperation Helm of Obedience. Or they're just doing it to see a little bit more information about our deck. That's fine too. Alright. So, Surgical Extraction beats Rector. That's something. Grafdigger's Cage can do some stuff. It can stop them recasting their Cabal Therapies, which is not nothing. But we need counter spells. We need to also deal with their little Rector shenanigans. Because we have a Cavern of Souls. We can kind of deal with that. I think Spell Pierce I'm less keen on. The Dazes on the play are a little bit less good. Or they are trying to resolve a 4-drop though. But it feels like it's going to be relatively easy for them to play around that. So I think we'll just try these 3 Surgicals and go from there. They didn't show us green mana, so it doesn't look like they're the Veteran Explorer build. We can ponder into some answers here. But we're going to have to do that. I think this is still a keep. Our opponent isn't turn 1 combo deck. So just having the ponder to find the right things is much better than mulliganing, I think. Phyrexian Tower. A Grief. Okay, they're probably going to take our ponder here. They get to sacrifice the Grief with the Phyrexian Tower, which is quite nice. And get 2 black mana. So they could then animate dead the Grief. That's pretty sick. They took the Lightning Bolt. That's interesting. That means they're probably just on a scam line here. Trying to get this Grief back into play and hope it does some stuff. Anodite Ritual. Oh dear. Cabal Therapy. Okay. What are we going to lose here? We have tools to rebuild. They'll probably take the Ponder. That's what I would take. That's a weird choice. They've taken the 2 red cards when we have no red mana. And they're shutting us off of red mana with Opposition Agent. That's a weird choice of things to discard in my opinion. They could have hit our blue spells that we can actually cast. Do we just want to get Delver and try and race them? They have no cards in hand. Or do we want to ponder and see if we can hit a second land this turn? Honestly, I think I'm just going to play the Delver out here. And am I holding this Bauble or would I just like to draw another card? I think I just want to draw another card. We're trying to find lands here. So let's see what our opponent's drawing next turn. We're going to see what we're drawing anyway, so... Oh, what am I doing? We're supposed to hit ourselves so we can stack our Bauble triggers. Alright, so we're going to lose another... So, if we Bauble ourselves in our opponent's turn, we can stack the Bauble trigger to see... so we can stack the Bauble trigger so we draw the card from the Delver. If we know it's not going to flip. So that was just a mistake on my part. So our opponent can only cast Cabal Therapy if they sacrifice their Opposition Agent. I don't think they should be doing that. I think they should just be turning their opposition sideways and hoping that it's good enough. Blind flip or a land? Not either of those, sadly. Alright, let's do the ponder now. We can take their only land and then ponder next turn. I don't hate that. Or we could play the Wasteland and play the Tarmogoyf next turn. Maybe that's better. Now, our opponent doesn't have access to mana unless they sacrifice their opposition agent. So I think we're better off just playing the Tarmogoyf, which will be a nice brick wall and can just win the game for us. And we've got the ponder flipping the Delver next turn. Yep, we can take 3. And then once we've played our Tarmogoyf, we can just happily Wasteland away their tower, if that's the thing that we think is important. Right, so we'll reveal our ponder. Green and 1. Get the Goyf in. Get bashing them up. This feels more like a Delver game. I guess we've just been playing Delver mirrors all day long, haven't we? So, which is a very weird game usually. An Urborg. Alright, let's give them black. Cabal Therapy. So they know some of the cards in our hand. I think they know Murktide. They know Ponder. Yep, and they know the Ponder from the Delver flip. We have a Surgical Extraction coming next, but we have the biggest thing on the board. So this is all good. We now also have a much better target for our Wasteland, which is quite a hefty chunk of damage. So our opponent will have to chump block next turn. A Lotus Petal. Okay. They found a black source. And a land. Okay. So this turn they have to chump block. And we just win in with good old Tarmogoyf. Nice to actually get a win on the board with a Tarmogoyf potentially. This Tarmogoyf is the thing that's definitely turned the corner for us. So if they remove it, I will say it's the thing that won us the game. If we win. We've got a thing covered if they have the Rector. Alright, so there's the match. So we finished on a 2-3, but we did play against 3 Delver mirrors this league, which is difficult. And like I said at the top, I used to play Delver like a decade ago when it was the Stifle Tempo Delver. These sorts of slightly newer fangled later game control-y type builds. I say later game control-y, but you know, they've got more long game than we used to have in Delver. And I'm not really used to them. So our opponents have almost certainly played more Delver mirrors than I have with this sort of iteration of deck. So I'm not surprised that we lost 2 of them at the end of the day. Although we did get absolutely smashed apart by some pretty ridiculous draws once or twice as well. Alright, let's talk about the deck. So this deck is fine. I don't particularly like it. I think it feels a little bit like we're playing the sort of blue-red Delver, but we've just kind of chucked some stuff in. And I don't think this is better than regular blue-red Delver. I also, like, because our mana base becomes a little bit more awkward. We have situations where we can't, you know, double bolt or channel a bolt or whatever, because we're playing these Tarmogoyfs. And whilst it does add a threat that doesn't get Pyroblasted or lightning bolted, I don't think you need to be playing a Delver deck that is really good in the Delver mirror at the moment necessarily. I think there's a lot. I say that we play against 3 Delver mirrors, right? But I think when Delver was like 20% of the meta or whatever, then yeah, stuff like Tarmogoyf can potentially give you an edge because it's a thing that's really hard for them to deal with. But there's so many other decks in the format, I'm not necessarily sure that's the case. And I think if you want to go for Tarmogoyf, you want to lean more into like the old school Delver build. Now this is obviously my massive bias coming here, but I preferred the Stifle Tarmogoyf Delver deck that I played on my channel, I don't know, a couple of months ago or something like that. I played like a Delver deck from like 10 years ago, and it felt really good. I think the Stifle plan is something that's quite unique, and it really facilitates what the sort of tempo-y style wants to do. Whereas this deck wants to go a little bit longer and sort of generate into sort of Murktides and generate advantage with the Sylvan Libraries. And I don't really like the Force of Negation here. I think we do want a Brazen Borrower somewhere in our deck. Honestly, I think I'd just either play like a full 4 Stifle goodness Tarmogoyf build, or I would play a straight up blue-red Delver. Now, I do think Minsc is potentially potent in some matchups, and it can, like against a control deck, if you stick a Minsc it's very difficult for them to beat it. And it wins the game so quickly that they need to find an answer right here, right now. So I don't think this deck is bad. I just don't think it's what I would personally like to play. And I think the results reflect that Blue Red Delver is probably the slightly better deck than this, if you want to sort of go this route. Because this is very, very similar suite of cards, right? We're missing out on a Brazen Borrower. Our mana base is a little bit ropier. And I don't think that's where we want to be. Nevertheless, it's still Delver. I think Delver has game against every single deck in the metagame, which is why it's such a good deck. It's just so flexible. Now, if you're in a Delver mirror and someone starts getting on top, it can be a bit problematic. You kind of work to certain breakpoints, and our opponent was more tooled out for the meta in one round because they had the counterbalance. That was a bit brutal, and then the other one they managed to we had a big exchange of things and they ended up on top, and that was all she wrote, really. They had the Wastelands that were impactful, whereas we had the Dazes that weren't. And if you have any wasted space in your deck in a Delver mirror, like in your hand, sorry, then it's just game over, because everything has to be so ruthlessly efficient. Otherwise, your opponent just gets ahead, and once they're ahead, it's much easier to stay ahead. So, like, we had turns ourselves where if we could untap, we'd be in a good shape, but that never really happened. So 2-3 wasn't a great record, but again, 2 of those losses were to the Delver mirror, which, you know, I'm not necessarily expecting to win with my inexperience with modern day Delver. And we got a little bit unfortunate. The Sneak and Show matchup, one of the rounds we kind of had a bunch of stuff, but they had a bit more. And then the next round was kind of a similar thing. And that's just what Sneak and Show can do to you sometimes. I've been on both sides of it on this channel, as I'm sure you've seen. So, such is life. Cyber-wise, I didn't really have any issues with the sideboard, but again, I do think Brazen Borrower somewhere. If you're not going to have it in the main deck, at least put one in the 75, probably over a Submerge. It's just a flexible answer that really helps out, and it's an evasive threat if you need it. Obviously, it's another card that takes away from your Delver flipping count, but I don't think that's necessarily that big of a deal at the end of the day. Alright, I think we're done here. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. I'll probably try some other Delver decks somewhere down the line. I've been toying with some Bug Delver ideas that I might give a go to at some point soon. I quite enjoy. I used to play Bug Shadow Delver a long time ago as well. That's what I played when I stopped playing Rug Delver, like years and years and years ago. So maybe I'll give that a whirl, sort of bring it back from the dead, see how it feels these days. I quite like doing that, taking a deck that I used to play a long time ago and seeing how it fares. And if it's anything like the Rug Delver deck I played before, that was really good. So I will put a link to the last time I played Rug Delver, which was the Stifle build. I'll put a link to that in the description so you can have a look at that in case you're interested and you missed that one. I thought that was a really good league. I was really impressed with the deck then, and I had a really good time. And I think my brain was molded to play those sorts of Stifle Delver decks rather than these sorts of newer builds, and I'm a little bit rusty with some of the higher end operations. I think maybe some of my decision making isn't as good as some of the people we played against necessarily. Now obviously the draws and things can sometimes take that away from you or whatever, but my brain is just naturally geared more towards Stifle and Delver than these builds. Anyway, sorry, rambling again. Don't forget to check out the Patreon. I've got a new updated version of the Green-Black Primer. It's not hugely updated because there hasn't been too much change since the last edition, but it's going to be a new version every month, so make sure, if that's something you really want to see, subscribe, especially since the format's about to change with Lord of the Rings cards, which go live tomorrow, I think. So, in terms of when I'm recording this anyway. So by the time you watch this, Lord of the Rings stuff will be live, but there'll be a little bit of lag because I record in advance. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.